Hello, folks. Welcome to the Win Again Clubroom, and this is Lunch and Learn. And I'm excited today to have Shirley Jump in with me. She's not only a New York Times and a USA Today best-selling author, she's published 80 plus books in 20 plus countries. She is a speaker. She's really, one of the best things I can say about her is she can see and demonstrate the value in being an author. She also does a lot of ghostwriting. We're going to be covering a lot of ground today, but I wanted to bring her in because I think that everybody, and I'm sure she'll agree, everybody has a book inside of them that they can get out. So come on in, Shirley, and join us. Hello, Shirley. How
Hi,
are you
thanks for
doing?
having me.
Thanks for being here and all that stuff.
I'm glad. I'm glad I live in Florida right now because of
Oh,
the
yeah.
cold everywhere else.
Well, I
So
was
thanks
telling
for
everybody
having
else
me.
that I walked the dog this morning. It was -5, which,
Oh my gosh.
and that's not, Celsius or any of these other things that my friends, the Canadians, use and everything else. But
Right.
anyway, but no, it looks very lovely down there. So, really, the first question I want to jump right in, if you don't mind, is
Mhm.
you've had your own company for a while, you've published tons of books and so forth. What do you think, in your opinion, makes for a worthy sort of content for a book? Like, what do you like to look for in a book, potential book?
So I always look for how to link the message that the client has back to their story. Whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, everybody kind of has a commonality of purpose. I published 83 books, and when I looked around book 10, I realized that I have the same sort of message or theme to every one of my novels. And it's the same thing that you want to do with your nonfiction book because, anybody can talk about, I don't know, let's say raising kids, right? Anybody that's been a parent can talk about raising kids. But what makes their book on raising kids different is how it relates back to their story, because that's what makes us unique. And that's something that people don't capitalize on enough, I think, in their books, and they don't make it compelling enough either.
Well, one of the things that when I wrote my book, one of the things that I was trying to keep in mind all the time was to constantly put myself in the reader's perspective and think,
Mhm,
what's going to actually make them want to turn this page to the next
mhm.
page? What's going to keep them engaged? Because I'm the king of half-read books. I abandon ship if they're not grabbing me, right?
Right, right.
And so, what kind of advice would you? Because I think it was interesting when someone said, "Mark, you should write a book." It's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, I'll do that tonight. That's easy." It's
Right,
it's not, right? But
right, exactly,
also
exactly.
sometimes people think, well, you know, do I deserve to be an author? Do I really have what it takes to be an author? What would you say to somebody like that?
So let's back up to, what makes a book compelling,
Yeah,
because you don't want people to put it down. That is the kiss of death. They'll never
right,
pick it up again. They'll
right,
never read your next book. They won't even know that your next book exists if they
right.
don't finish the first one. And that's making a story compelling is more complicated and has more into it than, or any kind of information compelling, than people think. Like, I just had a coaching call with an author yesterday, and she's like, I can't believe I need to know all these different things. Like, well, it's not just writing a story or writing your opinions about something. There's a lot more that goes into it. It's strategic. It's like having an ad in the New York Times. You're not going to waste any of that space. And it's the same thing with the book. So you got to look at how compelling is the story. Am I keeping people hooked from chapter to chapter? Do I have too much text? Because most people way overwrite, and white space, which is that space, between the paragraphs and broken up by headers and stuff like that, is vital. Because if you look at a book and you just see a lot of words, you're like, I can't read all that. Oh my God, I'm going to go to bed, right? It's just too overwhelming. And we're in a bite-sized media society now. So we need to keep the book information appearing bite-sized, even if it's really deep information. So that's sort of the thing that I really coach people on, is doing that, and figuring out what's going to get their message across in the best way to the potential readers that they have. And then I forgot the second half of your question. So
Well, no, but I mean, well, what is it about? I think most people say, well, I don't have, I
mhm.
don't have a story to tell. I don't have any. I'm just a simple person. I have nothing. How can you sort of? What do you tell people when they have that concern?
Everybody tells me that, right? Because none of us really think that we're all that special or important.
Mm.
And the thing that I look for in a discovery meeting with a client, and sometimes they'll just talk for an hour or so, and I'm just waiting to hear that one little nugget that ties back to making them unique. Because every single one of us is unique, and we all have a even if we're twins raised in the exact same household, we have a different life experience one way or the other. And that is what makes your book stand apart. And as for writing a book, it's a skill like anything else, right? Like I know how basketball works, right? Like I know how to dribble a ball and I know how, to shoot it. I'm not good at it because I don't have those innate skills. I didn't practice, I didn't drill, I didn't do any of that stuff. And just because you read a book or kind of know how a book works doesn't mean that it's easy to write a book, which is why a lot of people call me in, hopefully early in the process, so that I can help them with the structure and the framework and get them going in the right direction. And they're not wasting their time writing about stuff that nobody's going to read and then put their book down and never, work with them again.
And I can promise you, I've read many, many books, especially written
Mhm.
by athletes who could have used your service. Absolutely, because I think sometimes they realize they do have a fantastic story to
Mhm.
tell. They're just not good at storytelling. And
Right.
what's interesting is a lot of them choose, I don't want to say the easy way out or the cheap way out or something, but
Mhm.
they just rush to get something out. And
Mhm.
it's I have a whole bookshelf full of these books that
Mhm.
kind of, one of the things I like to say is when I read a book, whether it's, I mean, typically if it's a business book or one written by an athlete, I take notes and I take
Mhm.
notes in a yellow pad. And I like to say that, in my opinion, a book's value is how many pages of notes I take.
Mhm.
That's that value to me. And
Right.
so many of those books, it's been like, you know, My Life in the NFL by Bob Jones or whatever. And then that's
Right.
like nothing after that, like blah,
Right.
blah, blah. So, anyways, um, now, um, going back to that, do you feel like when you say you're a ghostwriter, I think the public's perception is, well, that must mean she writes it all or something. What
Mhm.
what does a ghostwriter really do?
So I'm a little bit different ghostwriter. And then one
Mhm.
of the problems that I see with the kind of books that you're talking about is that a lot of ghostwriters just stroke the client's ego and just write what they say they want them to write.
Right.
I've been in this industry my entire life, and I am not afraid to say to you, that's not going to fly. This is wasting the reader's time, or this is not going to make you look your best, or we're going to cut this. I remember having a client who did a memoir, and I cut 20,000 words from his book, and he was very, 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 very hands on. He wanted to know why I made every single move that I did. And I was taking chapters and combining them and moving them to different parts of the book. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. And he was basically hyperventilating through the whole process because he was afraid that it would destroy his message. And he said when he got through to the end and he reread his book from start to finish to do a proof, he goes, I was excited. Like I couldn't wait to find out what happened in the next chapter, even though it's my story and I know what happens in the next chapter. And that's my goal as a ghostwriter, is to be honest with the client and also keep it in their voice. And a lot of ghostwriters you meet, all their books sound the same, right? Because the ghostwriters puts their own voice in there. My goal is to always sound like the client. And if you pick up any of
Mm.
the books that I have worked on, you can't tell my words from the client's words, ideally, because I do collaborative ghostwriting. So most of my clients, I do what I'm doing with you right now. We sit down, we have a Zoom, and they talk, and I type. I type ridiculously fast, almost as quickly as they speak, and
Wow.
then I build the chapter from that. Yeah, so it sounds like them, but it has that framework that comes from being a professional author on my end.
Well, what makes you say that someone has an own individual voice? I mean, I can't imagine I have a voice. I'm joking. Of course, no, but I think you can often tell when you're reading something that's written by something. It's funny.
Mhm,
At first, when I was doing just before the book, when I was doing posts on social media or LinkedIn, whatever it might be, I would try to write them in a way that I thought was very professional and very
mhm,
whatever. And then people were like, "Who's that guy? Like, who are you writing on behalf of?
right,
It's not
right,
you." So since that time, I've been doing, everything in my own voice. I think that's what people sort of grow to appreciate.
right.
So,
But you also
so,
do it in a strategic way. When I
mhm,
work with clients, sometimes like Vance Johnson, former Denver Bronco, who's a huge proponent of recovery because he is in recovery from prescription drugs and alcohol abuse, and he goes
mhm.
around the country helping people get into recovery. When I sat down with him to do his book, we had a strategic meeting about it beforehand. It's not just his life story. It's okay, how are we going to present this in a way that people are going to read it? And if you know Vance, you know that he's very, very strongly religious, And that's something that can divide people right away from the first page. So we were strategic in how when we worked in the religion part, we didn't just put it on the first page. We were strategic in how we started with a hook in the story to make sure that people read it all the way through. And we were strategic in how we included statistics and relatable facts, because a lot of times with an athlete, people are like, well, I don't know who they are. They live this charmed life and they don't really have that bonding experience. By bringing it down to ordinary life, what he went through, people could hopefully relate to that and get his story and hear his message more. So it's all about being very smart in how you structure the book, not just how unique your story is. There's a lot more to it that can make a bigger impact on everybody.
Now, do you find that when you speak to a prospective author, that
Mhm.
their focus is on, I want to write this book because it means a lot to me? Or is it more, I want to write this book because I want to sell books? Or is it, I want to write this book because I know it will lead to business and make me a sort of an authority figure, a subject matter expert sort of thing?
I don't think that most people are seeing that third option. I really don't. And the more that
Interesting.
I talk to business people, they're starting
Yeah.
to see how that can differentiate them in a crowded marketplace.
Right.
Most people are like, well, I feel really passionate about the story and I want to get it out there. Well, you're going to spend a considerable sum of money working with me over the course of 9 months to a year, however long it takes to do the book. And the first question I have is, how are you going to make your money back? Because the chances of you selling $20,000 worth of books on Amazon is very, very small, frankly, unless you have a lot of name recognition and a huge Instagram following or whatever. Because there's just too much content. 16 million books on Amazon. I think
Yeah.
30,000 are loaded every month. So it's just
Wow.
the marketplace is too crowded. And frankly, the money doesn't really come from there. It doesn't come from there for me. I have 83 books published with New York publishers, and then I've done some self publishing. And my money comes from teaching, coaching, and speaking. I make decent royalties and everything. You can't with that much quantity. You definitely do, but the bulk of my income comes from that. So when I talk to people and they're like, "I got this great story," well, we move into, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to get your message out there? How are you going to use this to make you the money back? And if you're a business person, how are you going to use it to push your brand? And the book doesn't have to be like, I have an insurance agent who is working with me. He's not doing a book about insurance. He's doing a book kind of about his own life story. It has nothing to do with his insurance business,
Oh,
because he just
hmm.
wants to get in front of people speaking about a topic he feels very passionate about. But that's going to parlay him into becoming an expert in another arena, which is good because there's a million insurance agents out there, right? And now he's going to start building a secondary revenue stream for himself with speaking engagements with this really unique book idea that he has.
So you are truly multifaceted because you're not only, uh, a sort of advisor to authors as they write their book and you're ghostwriting and so forth, but then you're also advising them on, okay, now you've got a book. How
Mhm.
about so let's figure out ways to make money. So you
Right.
actually will work with the author to develop a strategy on how they can book sort of speaking engagements
Mhm.
or whatever it might be, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't handle a lot of publicity and marketing after the book is done, because my specialty is in building the book and creating great content. But because I've been there, I do have them plan ahead as they're going through the book. And if it's a book for a business person or an entrepreneur, there's a lot of calls to action within the book to go to my website, download this, because
Mm.
once you've captured that person, you want to keep that person within your ecosystem. So there's always some kind of a call to action to get them to continue interacting with you, because you don't want them to put down the book and never get on your email list or never to sign up for one of your classes or your coaching services or whatever you're doing. So that's always our goal with every single book that's self-published. And that's the beauty of self-publishing. If you do
I know.
traditional publishing, New York doesn't want you putting in all kinds of,
Yeah.
calls to go to your website. But if you self-publish, you have that flexibility.
So, all right, now this is a selfish question. So my book, it's been out for about 4 years.
Hmm.
Um, it still is possibly one of the top books ever written, but I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but clearly there's some updating needs to happen.
Hmm.
I didn't use that what you just talked about. I didn't really put a lot of my website and that kind of stuff in their
Hmm.
calls to action. It's more towards the last page or two or that sort of
Hmm.
thing. At the time, my feeling was I'd read too many books that I thought were too much of a push to upsell and not really content,
Hmm.
and I didn't like that. So I wanted to make
Hmm.
sure that this was all content. And
Hmm.
oh, by the way, if you think you want to talk to me someday, great.
Hmm.
Now I agree. I think there should be something in between. So
Right.
is there such a thing as, so tell me, I'm wondering, is there such a thing as like a second edition and updates and all that kind of
Mhm,
stuff, or is that not
mhm.
done, or how's that
I do
work?
that quite. I have several clients that had been with a relatively unscrupulous publishing company before what was called a publishing company,
Okay.
and they got their rights back to their books, and they came to me and they're like, "Well, I want to release it again, but it was already out there." I said, "What we do
Mm,
is we call it an expanded second edition with extra material
okay.
or something that they didn't have before." And that way people who maybe didn't read the books the first time or who didn't buy it the first time are going to be like, oh, there's more here. So there's definitely strategies to doing that. And I agree with you about the upsell, the constant upsell. I don't like that. What
Mm,
the calls to action that I have are kind of like, oh, it's sort of like a loss leader, right? Like, here's a
mm,
free handout on this, or here's a free 15-minute consultation or something like that, that is not about selling to them,
mm.
because people are just going to get annoyed. You just want to
Right.
give them more value and find a way to capture those email addresses.
Okay, so for everybody watching and listening, look for that updated second edition coming to your local Amazon book, no, somewhere. Anyways, that sounds fantastic. So, in terms of using that book as like what do you try to tell people? Because look, I could tell you from my experience. I worked with an editor. I thought she was fantastic. I was doing really all the writing because I like to
Mhm.
write, but she was sort of the whoosh, get in line
Right.
and do this and stay to this, and how to organize better and that kind of thing. But um, what do you think about the role of, I mean, as an editor slash, ghostwriter and so forth? It sounds like it really depends on the author completely,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm flexible because I know my creative process is different from other authors' creative processes. So some people come to me and they want me to do the whole thing at first, and then they find that they want to write more. And it's a very flexible and fluid process, especially for the first 3 chapters, because I'm figuring out who they are, they're figuring out me, and we're kind of finding a happy middle ground for working on the book. And I don't really care if my clients want to write or have me do it. I'm good either way, as long as we understand that our end goal is going to be met. Because 5 years with this, what do you want to use it for? How are we going to make that happen? So yeah, everybody is a little bit different that way, and I have no problem with that because I get
Now I'm a New York City guy, incredibly impatient. I want things
it.
done tomorrow, right? It's just,
Right.
or today. What is a realistic time frame between someone waking up one morning saying, maybe I'll write a book, and
Mhm.
it being in my hands?
Fastest I've ever done one is 3 months. I
Wow.
think that's a really hard. So I'm fast at what I do. I still write 4 to 5 books a year of my own, from my Shirley Jump career, and then I produce 5 to 7 client books a year. So we're talking like 12 so books every year.
Hmm.
So that's like a book a month coming out of my office. But most clients can't really work that quickly, and so I say 6 months is an aggressive schedule. 9 months
Okay.
to a year is more realistic, because it's a learning process for the client too, to kind of figure out what I'm looking for and how we're going to beef up this content, and they've got to take time to think about what they want to put in there. Because it doesn't really work if I dictate the whole thing and make it my own. It really has to be theirs, and so they need to be plugged in and involved as well. And not everybody has the time in their schedule to work on a book every single day. So 6 months, 9 months, a year, depending on how long the book is and how much the client is going to be involved, is realistic.
Well, for Mr. Impatient here, it took like a year. It took a while.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I joke with people about how, you know, I think sometimes an author feels like they, they were, um, like, I'm done with this manuscript. I'm done now, finally. And then the clouds clear, and then you see you're only halfway up the mountain, because then there's all the
Mhm.
other stuff about titles and this and that, all
Mhm.
kinds of stuff. So,
Right.
but I mean, look, it's all. I can also say that one of my thrilling moments in my life was getting that first proof book in my hand
Mhm.
and saying, "Holy crap! I can't believe I just did this. This is my
Right.
sort of legacy." And it's, I guess, I mean, I'm not a I've never given birth, clearly,
Mhm. Mhm.
but what I've heard is that it's a very painful experience to get to that
Mhm.
point, but then you forget about the pain soon after, sort of a thing, because you have a
Mhm.
child.
Right.
And I think writing a book was challenging and painful and so forth, but now I had the book. And
Right.
now I've been sort of I'm confused enough to think, oh, maybe I'll just do another one, forgetting completely all the pain and torture I went through.
Right.
But I look, I think I know who's first in line when I come to my senses and want to do that. But before we jump away in a second, I guess someone was asking, you know, do you believe what's your opinion about doing that free plus shipping or giving it away as a sort of a loss leader or as
Mhm.
sort of an expensive business card?
Mhm.
What are there strategies around that? What do you think about that?
I think it's a great thing to do if you can afford it. Now, not everybody can, but a typical self-published book, like, one of mine are like, they're like 20 bucks, right? 15 to 20 bucks on Amazon. For somebody that doesn't know you, that's a lot of an investment for them to spend. 3 bucks, okay, fine, or a 99-cent download, fine, they'll probably do that. But 15 to $20 is a lot of investment for people that don't know you. So and if your book is well done, if you have a crappy book, I wouldn't do anything with it because there are a lot of crappy books out there that only make people look worse. But if your book is well done, I think it is in your best interest to give away the book for free. When I do speaking engagements, a lot of times I have them buy 100 or 200, how many people are going to be, copies of the
Mm,
book in lieu of my fee or in addition to, or taking a cut rate in my fee. Because those people are going to leave there with that book and they're going to have a reminder and something they can talk about. And if you're in an industry where there's a million of the same thing, like a financial planner or like insurance agent or whatever, you're going to be differentiated because you have a book. They're going to say, "Oh yeah, that's the guy with the book," and they're going to remember you. So there's a lot of benefits to this, even though it can be an expensive proposition because you're printing the book for like 5, 6 bucks a copy. You're mailing it
right.
for like $4. So be judicious about it, but be aware that it can really imprint on you. And if it's a good book, like your book is a good book, and I'm not a retired athlete looking for a new career, and yet I still read it because it was well written. It's got great information, and it kept my attention. Which, as an author and an editor, it's very rare that I find books that do that. But that was a great door opener business card for you because I'm going to forever remember that you're the guy that wrote Win Again, right? So it can be a fabulous way for you to get in as a coach, as a speaker, as a webinar person, whatever you want to do if you have that authority in that in print version.
That's well, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And that was the goal, was to make sure that anybody reading it, I mean, you can cross out the word athlete and put anything
Mhm,
else in there. And I wanted to just really create instant value. So I appreciate that. So going forward, look, I want to have a chance for everybody to jump in and chat
mhm,
with us here. But what is the best way for people to reach out to you? And I guess, well, let me start with that.
mhm.
What's the best way for people to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn under Shirley Jump, and my website is jumpstartcreativesolutions.com. So either way is fine. You can email me through my website, or you can message me on LinkedIn or Facebook. Everything is Shirley Jump, so it's easy to remember.
Now, I think everybody here and people listening will wonder, how can they, like, do you have some sort of like a, I almost want to say take this quiz to see if you can write a book kind of a thing, but almost like a guide that will help people understand that maybe they could be doing this? Or is it just something where you just simply tell everybody, hey, Mike, hey, Bob, hey, Sue, hey,
Mhm,
Nancy, you can write a book, and it's easier than you think it might be? I mean,
right.
what do you?
That's what normally happens in the discovery call, and I'll
Mhm,
be honest with people. I'm not here to stroke anybody's ego, right? I'm
right.
gonna say, "You know what? That's not enough to sell a book in this market. If you've got another self-help book that's not unique enough." And my goal is to always find that unique element if they want it. And I have to say that there isn't a client that I haven't found something unique to make their book stand out because I've been in this industry forever, and I'm familiar with what's going on. I don't have a quiz. There is no quiz because everybody has a unique story and everybody has an angle. They just might not see it. And that's where an outside experienced person can look at it and go, ah, that's what makes you unique, and pull that story out of you.
That's awesome. So one last question from, I was just thinking, some people may say, gee, but a book is, whatever,
Mhm.
120, 150, 200 pages, etc. What do you think about I'm just thinking about this randomly, but like a 40-page or 50-page, almost like a booklet or
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
Is that also something that people can do that I mean, can that be valuable and so forth?
Hmm.
Or
Absolutely. More as a download than as a book. Because if you get this really skinny book, you're like, well, this is a pamphlet, right? It's not as impressive if you do it in print. But I
okay,
have a number of ebooks, and they have like a whole series going that brand them as the expert, like in let's say they're, medical, and they're doing an ebook on eating vegan, an ebook on, mindfulness. So that they've got this whole series of little short books. Plus it's a lot cheaper way to get involved, because my pricing is based on how much ghostwriting I have to do and how big the project is. My pricing has a range because of that. And for a lot of people, that's a nice, easy way to dip their toe in the water and then see if they want to do a full book. And they still get that benefit of saying, hey, I'm the author of XYZ.
got it. Christina just had a quick question. I just saw it
Mhm.
here. What do you think about having affiliates or advocates within the book that you can that they leverage that exposure and sort of, they're able to. I mean, because I've seen books that have, for example, some of them have chapters written by
Mhm.
other people.
Mhm.
Others just have almost like their own books inside of other people's books,
Mhm.
but they're using it as a mechanism.
Mhm.
What's your feeling on that, and what's a good way to do that?
So I just finished one. I don't have that one in front of my office right now today, but I just finished one that was a compilation with a networking group that
Mm,
had 50 people that contributed to it. So it's a great way to offset the cost of the book, to give everybody an author credential, and a much cheaper way for people to get in and do that, because you're going to spend a lot of money to do a book on your own, but if you get 15 people to write about a particular topic, you just split up the cost that way. And for organizations or foundations that are looking to raise money, I did one for a foundation last year that had, I think, a dozen stories in it. It's all a great way to give more exposure and get more buy-in and everything else. Because the other thing is, if you have 15 people in your book, you've got 15 people's social media following, you've got 15 people's newsletter lists, you've got all of that marketing push. And so those compilation books are a really great way to do it, and kind of start off with being an author with other people. And if it hits a list, like I'm in an anthology that last year hit the USA Today list. I've already been on the USA Today list, but a number of the authors had never been there. And now all of a sudden they have, I'm a USA Today bestselling author next to their name. So those kinds of bestseller statuses are shared by everybody in the book if you happen to be able to do that.
I like how that sounds.
Yeah.
I'll have to work on
There's a
that.
strategy, and it's tough. It's not easy to hit a list, but it can be done. I give my clients a lot of tips about pre-orders and things like that. If they want to work it, they can make it happen.
Well, I joke with people sometimes that I could someday say that I'm an Amazon bestseller if I'm under the broccoli growers category or
Right.
something like some mysterious thing. But anyway, well, look, I truly appreciate your time. This has really been interesting, and I've learned a lot, and I know everybody participating has learned a lot too. So, thank you so much
Thank
for.
you. Thanks for
Yeah, this
having
is
me.
great. This is awesome.